Tonight, Eddie Marsan reveals the loneliness of the long-distance bureaucrat in still life.
All aboard for a wild post-apocalyptic ride in Snowpiercer.
And Colin Firth investigates the West Memphis 3 in Devil's Knot. Hello there.
Hi.
Also tonight, Sophia Tokowitz documents a relationship fractured by war in Once My Mother.
Stanley Tucci attempts to reignite an abandoned romance in Some Velvet Morning.
And we revisit Billy Wilder's classic Sunset Boulevard. But Jason, why don't you tell us about Devil's Knot?
Well, it's the story of a heinous crime that actually took place in West Memphis, Arkansas in 1993. 3 8-year-old boys went missing from their suburban homes and were later found mutilated and hogtied in a nearby creek. The subsequent police investigation, which saw 3 teenagers convicted, has since been the subject of much debate, and many loose threads remain unaccounted for.
He gave this as a gift to the documentary crew. So when were you planning to tell us about it?
Mr. Fogelman released the records concerning this knife yesterday.
No, but you've known about it for months, so could you not tell us about it?
Well, we had to send it to the lab first. DNA testing.
There was blood on the knife.
Just a little bit. I'll show you right here, the lock joint where the blade folds back. Just not much.
Where you might miss it if you're trying to wipe the blade clean.
That did cross my mind.
At first glance, a director like Ato Mogoyan might have seemed well suited to tell this story of tragedy and innocence lost. His 1997 film, The Sweet Hereafter, was a haunting tale of a small community and a devastating school bus accident. Screenwriters Paul Harris Boardman and Scott Derrickson, both of whom have a list of horror movie credits, also seemed like a promising choice. After all, this crime is a grisly one. The blue-collar backwater characters are a little bit sinister, and the main suspects are heavy metal, Satan-worshipping teenagers. Unfortunately, this film never seems sure of what it wants to do. Rage with anger at a miscarriage of justice, or brood menacingly as it explores the dark heart of small-town America. I felt sorry for Colin Firth, cast as a sceptical private investigator who starts to uncover some shonky police work. He hardly has one decent dramatic scene to get his teeth into. Reese Witherspoon, meanwhile, plays the mother of one of the dead boys, but she's never given much more than 2 dimensions to work with. If you want to know more about these murders, I'd recommend the documentaries made by Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky, the first of which, Paradise Lost, is much more captivating and insightful than this film. It's a pity to see Agoyan fumbling around here, unable to create anything great with the material, be it mood, drama or social critique. It's far from his best work. Judith, what did you think?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. It's hard to know what this film brings to the table that's new about this case. I actually did think there were some powerful scenes early on in the film, and I do think Reese Witherspoon and Colin Firth are really fine in it. But all of this interesting stuff happens after the court case. You know, there's all that text at the end of the movie, and you just think, well, why didn't I see that film?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And it feels like a lot of the film is just this really straightforward courtroom drama, and we don't learn anything that we don't already know to an extent. It felt like a bit of a cop-out to me.
Yeah, and you're just thinking, what does a director of a feature bring to it? He's got to bring something like mood and texture, and he doesn't really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not much.
It feels like a compelling film could be made of this case, but this isn't it. I was disappointed too. I mean, I think there's enough there. I'm giving it 3 stars.
I'm giving it 2.
When Officer Ridge asks you, how do you think the person feels who did this? Your answer was, probably makes them feel good. Gives them power. Is that correct? Or I guess Officer Ridge made that up too.
No, I use common sense on that. If someone was doing it, they must have wanted to. And if they were doing something they wanted to, it must have made them happy.
So in your mind, it is common sense that killing 3 8-year-olds would make you feel good?
Whoever did it must have.
Devil's Knot opens in limited national release this week. Only the second feature film from Umberto Pasolini, Still Life is the story of John May, played by the wonderful Eddie Marsan. For over 20 years, John has worked for the council, finding the next of kin for those who've died alone, and when no one can be found, organising and attending the funerals. John is actually living the kind of life where it appears that if he died, he'd be in a similar boat. His work prevents him from being lonely, though, and he prides himself on it. He is thorough but slow, and so is made redundant by his arrogant new boss, who gives him just a few days to finish up his last case. Coincidentally, it is that of Billy Stoke, a man who lived directly opposite John and whose life, full of adventure and people as well as violence and alcoholism, is in stark contrast to his own. John is determined to find any family that Billy might have and turns up an abandoned daughter, Kelly, the ever-likeable Joanne Froggatt. The two seem to fill a missing part in each other, and their friendship, along with John's determination to honour Billy's life, opens the solitary, rigid council worker in many little unexpected ways.
I thought this piece here, it really has something. I'm sure it's never been used in a funeral before, but you'll hear when you hear it. Next Friday, and yes, the memorial. They call it red granite, but it's not red. It's darker, more maroon. It's like the colour of his beret in the army. I thought your father would have liked that. And the place, I really hope you like it. Well, on a good day, you can see for miles, and even when the weather's not that great, it's so open. You really feel your butt. You really feel your. He is. He's outside. He's not inside. Not under.
I need to say that this film particularly resonated with me. I've rarely seen the poignancy of death so beautifully captured, such as a moment when John picks up a dead woman's moisturiser and we see the indentation where her fingers have recently been, along with her drying stockings, which she fully expected to wear. There's humour to the movie too, and Eddie Marsan is just fantastic in the way that he manages to convey the internal life of this very good man. The film also manages to show in subtle moments the importance of connection, like when we see the casual intimacy of a family going about their daily lives. I was so moved by Still Life and found the ending heartbreaking. This is a film about death, loneliness and connection. But more than anything, I think it's about decency, Jason. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess it is. I agree with you. The art direction's really good in it. The way that the flats of these lonely people who die with pretty much no one around them are decorated is, really poignant. There's that indentation in the pillow where the lady slept for the last time and all that. Really well done. It's a short film. I was a little bit surprised at where it ended. And it had me wondering, what is it about exactly? Is it about sort of coming together to mourn someone and forgiving them in that mourning process?
I think it's about connection.
Well, I just don't think it was long enough to really develop any sort of thesis with any great depth.
Oh, but I just think because, he is this solitary guy, but he has connected to these dead people. I love the way he's got a photograph of all of them and he keeps them in a photo album that he looks at, so someone is remembering them.
I found that a bit creepy, actually.
Oh, see, I thought he was this wonderful caretaker of the dead. I just loved it. I am giving it 4.5 stars.
Could have been more substantial. I'm giving it 3. Still Life opens around the country in limited release this week. Our next film is Snowpiercer. The year is 2031 and the Earth has entered a new ice age, triggered by an experiment to halt global warming that went terribly wrong. Virtually all life has been wiped out, but a small group of humans survive on board a perpetually moving train called the Snowpiercer, which circles the globe. Built by a rich industrialist known as Wilford, Ed Harris, its passengers are divided into a brutal class system, with those at the back living in cramped squalor and those in the front enjoying the luxuries of fine food, restaurants, nightclubs and healthcare. But a group of tail inhabitants, led by Curtis, played by Chris Evans, plans to take on the train's violent security force and break through to the front.
You people who have suckled the generous titty of Wilford ever since for food and shelter. And now, in front of our hallowed water supply section, no less, you repay his kindness with violent hooliganism. You scum. Precisely 74% of you shall die.
This is a beautifully made science fiction allegory about the perversions and arrogance of power. It's acted supremely well, paced brilliantly, and art directed with great flair. Experiencing how the interior of the train transforms from the gunmetal grey and brown grime of the back end into the rich colours and expensive materials of the luxury carriages is a delight. South Korean director Bong Joon-ho, adapting a French graphic novel and filming in English for the first time, shows great skill to alternate between suspense, tragedy and even comedy. He came of age during the 1980s, an era of great upheaval in Korean society, and you can't help but feel a lot of the film's emotional impact comes from him channeling some of the things he experienced on a first-hand basis during those tumultuous years. It reminded me a bit of Pasolini's 1975 allegory about fascism, Salo, for its depiction of people in a confined space subjected to sadistic, grotesque authority figures. A special mention here for Tilda Swinton, sporting a hideous set of dentures in the role of a propaganda official. But putting aside the layers of political critique, Snowpiercer is a damn good action movie as well. Don't you think, Judith?
No question I would recommend it, and people have got to see it on the big screen. But it is flawed, I would have to say. I mean, it's such an epic journey that I think the characters are archetypes, really. So I found it a bit difficult to actually care that much about anyone.
Oh, that's interesting.
While visually it's just amazing as they get to the front of the train, I actually felt it lost a little bit of momentum. And so by the time we got to the very front, for me, at the end, it does get a little predictable and a tiny bit cliched, and that's when I started to see holes in the sense of it, and I did think the last scene looked a little bit like a Benetton commercial. But there's so much good stuff in here.
I mean, yeah, it's packed full of good stuff. I didn't mind the archetypes. I think that there are moments where, I mean, in one sense, it's quite a realist film, so I did find myself wondering, hold on, do the kids who go to the school in carriage B have to go through the nightclub carriage to get to...
Yeah.
You know, which perhaps
and
speaks
that says
to...
it's losing you a little, I
Yeah,
reckon.
maybe, but I'm giving it 4 stars.
I'm giving it 3.5.
Minister Mason, we were just about to show a video.
Very good.
From a very young age, Mr. Wilford's love of locomotives was apparent.
When I grow up, I will own a train forever.
His early dreams were realized when he founded his transportation empire, the Wilford Industries. But his greatest dream was to construct a luxury locomotive cruise line connecting railways of the entire world into one.
A circular railway that extends for 438,000 kilometers and completes one circle every year.
Snowpiercer opens in limited release this week. In the documentary Once My Mother, Sophia Turkowitz interweaves her mother Helen's extraordinary life story with her own as a first-generation Australian. Helen's childhood saw her living in the streets of rural Poland before, like almost 2 million other Poles, she was taken to a Russian gulag during World War II. Eventually, she winds up in a refugee camp in Africa, where she meets Italian prisoner of war Valdiero and becomes pregnant with Sophia. The single mother and her daughter finally find a home in Adelaide, but Helen winds up placing Sophia in an orphanage for 2 years. The filmmaker has been trying to make sense of this abandonment her whole life, and with her mother now in the grips of dementia, she returns to an incomplete documentary about her and sets about trying to understand both her mother's life and her own before it's too late, even returning to her mother's homeland in what is now the Ukraine.
That Katerina was killed when she was a young... Ким вона була вбита?
Я їх туди бігла, перебігала. Не то, це коли русські прийшли.
When Soviet people came here, so she was killed.
Нас робили чистку, розумієте? Ми Західна Україна...
She was running from them and they just застрелили.
Так, розстріляли молоду. І не так.
Який рок?
Забілів.
Ну, я знаю,
There's a lot about this documentary that I liked. Helen's story is incredible, and I knew nothing about the treatment of the Polish people during the war. It's also interesting to see Australia's much more welcoming approach to refugees. And I admired Sophia's honesty about both her issues and the fact that she exploited her mother's story for her successful 1984 feature film, Silver City. And yet I wasn't as moved by this piece as I thought I would be, and part of me wonders if it's because Sophia's problems and her resentments of her mother's abandonment seem like small fry compared to Helen's hardships. Maybe it would have been more affecting if it had just been her mother's story, with the impact her life had on her daughters being part of that whole. Sophia does such a good job of uncovering Helen's motivations for putting her in an orphanage that by the time the question of forgiveness comes up, I wondered if there was anything to forgive. Did you feel that at all?
I really disagree with you on this. I mean, I think that what makes this film amazing is Sophia's part of the story. And I think, sure, Hitler and Stalin, all that huge history in the background is you know, amazing to hear about. But I think Sophia's story as this girl growing up in Australia, being embarrassed, she admits, it was a very frank portrayal of her upbringing here. She says she was embarrassed by her mother because she couldn't speak English, because she was uneducated. Then she goes off and becomes a filmmaker, and there she is in what she calls her new shiny world, and she can't bring herself to still reconcile her life as an Australian with the mother.
That isn't important, but I still think compared to the mum, I mean, you know, she's got dementia, she's led this extraordinary life.
That's what I think makes it even more poignant. I mean, the fact that Sophia is making this film now and finally finishing it, the mum doesn't hardly recognise her some days, is just so poignant. This almost brought me to tears.
Okay, well, I think it's just it's obviously struck a chord with you that it hasn't to quite the same extent with me. I mean, I still think, you know, it's a really good film. I'm giving it 3.5 stars.
Because it moved me so emotionally, I'm going to give it 4.
The Russian things, they took at all the rich people. The rich people was run away, and they took at poor people with their children, without clothes, without shoes. And then so many die, they just start out. I thought, oh my God, must be on me tomorrow.
Once My Mother opens around the country in limited release this week. In Some Velvet Morning, middle-aged Fred, Stanley Tucci, turns up on the doorstep of the much younger, beautiful Velvet, Alice Eve. He has a pile of luggage with him and he announces to her that he's finally left his wife. Clearly, this is not something Velvet had expected. For the next 80 minutes, we will learn about their complex and fraught story as a couple, and we will never leave this Manhattan townhouse. Oh, the agony. You might think that spending more than an hour with a couple of talented Hollywood actors as they chew through a script chock-a-block with gender politics sounds like a good time. Remember, writer-director Neil LaBute is the filmmaker who gave us that can't-look-away portrait of misogyny back in the late 90s in The Company of Men, and the pretty accomplished black comedy Death at a Funeral. And yet, this cliche-ridden film is a staggering disappointment, a morally offensive, done-on-the-cheap movie with a lifeless single location that's like something LaBute rented from a real estate agent friend for the weekend on the proviso he didn't touch any of the display furnishings. Tucci's character is a no-means yes kind of guy, which explains why Velvet can't push him back out the door. But the film really could have put us out of our misery much earlier. Instead, it's determined to tease as Tucci plays nice and gets angry, then plays nice again, and Eve's character tries to outwit him with her wily feminine ways in that skimpy red dress. It's outrageous the way the film so cynically employs the threat of sexual violence as a spectacle. By the time you arrive at the final annoying twist, you realise you've been treated with utter contempt by the director and his accomplices. Did you like it?
I think about the only thing I would disagree with you about is surely that's not a dress she's wearing, it's a top, isn't it? It's just so ridiculously short.
It's a big T-shirt.
Yeah, look, this has ruined a perfectly good Lee Hazelwood and Nancy Sinatra song for me. It really made me angry, actually. And, I mean, it does make you think of his earlier work, like In the Company of Men and Your Friends and Neighbours. But there was a point to those films.
Yeah,
there was a point to the unpleasantness.
This is so bad that unfortunately you won't know how bad it is until you actually see it, and then once you do, you will want that 80 minutes back.
You really will. It's smoke and mirrors. I have no idea what he's trying to say about these characters, about men and women. There's that horrible climax and then the ridiculous twist that makes you go, oh, this was an even bigger waste of time than I already thought it was.
Awful. Awful. I'm going to give it 1 star.
Yeah, I'm giving it 1.5. God knows why I threw in the half.
What are you talking about? I just said go.
No. You made a threat, all right? Let's call it what it was, all right? It was a threat. You threatened me, all right? You said, don't make me get all... What? What's next?
Fred, just go.
No, I want to know what would happen. Go ahead, tell me. What would happen if I chose not to honor your request?
Who cares? Some Velvet Morning opens in limited release next week. Tonight's classic is the Billy Wilder-directed 1950s film noir masterpiece, Sunset Boulevard. The film opens with a shot of its dead floating narrator, hack screenwriter Joe Gillis, William Holden. We retrace Joe's steps and see that the start of his demise was the night he pulled into the driveway of a ghoulish Hollywood mansion while trying to dodge some debt collectors. He is mistaken for an undertaker by the home's owner, faded silent screen legend Norma Desmond, Gloria Swanson, and her butler Max, played by Austrian director Erich von Stroheim.
I want the coffin to be white, and I want it specially lined with satin. White or deep pink. Maybe red, bright flaming red. Let's make it gay. How much will it be? I warn you, don't give me a fancy price just because I'm rich.
Lady, you got the wrong man. I had some trouble with my car, flat tire. I pulled into your garage until I could get a spare. I thought this was an empty house.
It is not. Get out.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry you lost your friend. And I don't think red is the right color. Wait a minute, haven't I seen you before? I know your face.
Get out, or shall I call my servant?
You're Norma Desmond. Used to be in silent pictures, used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Once Norma realises that Joe is not there to bury her dead chimp, she elicits his help with a screenplay that she's been working on for years, the story of Salome, which will be her great comeback. Joe thinks it'll be a quick way to make a buck, but he is soon a kept man, trapped in Norma's world of delusion. Max is the orchestrator of this fantasy as he writes her many fan letters and keeps reality at bay. Eventually, Norma learns that Joe has been secretly writing with and has fallen for the wholesome Betty Schaefer, Nancy Olson, and she topples into the madness that she's been on the brink of. I love this movie. Wilder co-wrote the film with Charles Brackett, and while there is definitely humour in it, it's a very dark and realistic portrayal of Hollywood that blurs art and life. Gloria Swanson was a huge star in the silent era, and when Norma plays Joe one of her old movies, it's the Gloria Swanson film Queen Kelly, which was directed by Erich von Stroheim. All the references are real. Cecil B. DeMille plays himself actually on the set of the film he was working on, Samson and Delilah, and her waxworks friends are other bona fide silent movie stars, including Buster Keaton. Ahead of its time, the look of the film is macabre, the dialogue razor sharp, and the performance is terrific. But Gloria Swanson as the demented, narcissistic Black Widow spider is magnificent, because while she's a monster, you still care for her. Don't you reckon?
Yeah, it's a great film. And it's part of that sort of collection of films about fading stardom that's explored via you know, the figure of the ageing female star, which is, and I know that sort of a lot of feminist critics have argued the pros and cons of whether this is a kind of misogynistic sort of subgenre or not.
I didn't think so.
Yeah,
I think it's having a go at Hollywood.
I think so too. But William Holden in it is fantastic, isn't he? Because he's kind of got the presence of a tough guy.
Yeah.
And yet he's spineless. He's
Absolutely.
morally very weak, and he's full of self-loathing.
Mind you, I think pretty spineless around Norma
Yeah,
Desmond.
well,
I
that's
have to
probably
say,
true.
she is scary.
Yeah. And how good Cecil B. DeMille. I mean, that
Yeah.
moment when she goes onto the set and there's a moment where one of the gaffers puts a spotlight on her and all her old friends, the extras and all that, are gathered around like in the old days, and then he sort of radios up to the gaffer and says, put that light back where it belongs. It's so poignant, so
and it
sad.
is, because he says, I remember her when she was a kid and, you know, this is what this industry has done to her. But let's have a little bit more of Gloria Swanson.
Norma, I can't take it. You bought me enough.
Shut up. I'm rich. I'm richer than all this new Hollywood trash. I've got $1 million.
Keep it.
Own 3 blocks downtown. I've got oil and Bakersfield. Pumping, pumping, pumping. What's it for but to buy us anything we want?
Cut out that us business.
What's the matter with you?
What right do you have to take me for granted?
What right? You want me to tell you?
Has it ever occurred to you that I may have a life of my own, that there may be some girl that I'm crazy about?
Who? Some car hop or dress extra?
What I'm trying to say is that I'm all wrong for you. You want a Valentino, somebody with polo ponies, a big shot.
What you're trying to say is you don't want me to love you. Say it. Say it.
You can't take your eyes off either of them. And if you want to hear more of Franz Waxman's great score for Sunset Boulevard, make sure you tune in this Sunday from 3:30 p.m. when it will be featured on ABC Classic FM's Screen Sounds program.
Well, they've been mighty big shoes to fill, but it's been great filling in for David and Margaret again, so thanks a lot for having us.
That's it for us. Good night.
Good night.